Joining us now from America, he's just been to the White House. He's a great friend of the show. Ami Horowitz, you've been on Outsiders many times, but this is, I think, your first trip to the White House. Tell us why, and tell us why you were there. How are you, Ami?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me back. Well, it's not my first trip to the White House, fellas, but my first trip to actually watch an executive order signing that I was partially, if not totally, responsible for.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, I was very proud. I went to the White House. There was a Hanukkah celebration that I was able to attend, and there was a signing of an incredible executive order that the president signed protecting Jews on campus. Now, a lot of you guys may not know this, but there is a tremendous rise in anti-Semitism across the U.S., but not a rise from the right, which has always been there, is still there, it'll never go away. That's not where the growth in anti-Semitism is coming from. The growth in anti-Semitism is coming from the left, particularly from our college campuses. So the reason, the story behind this was that, and there's actually an Australian connection to it, believe it or not, I was sitting on Bondi Beach last year, and I got a text message there was going to be a massive conference between Duke and the University of North Carolina, two very large and prestigious schools in America. And it was going to be a conference bashing Israel. So they said, you should probably go and film there. So I did. So I went and I filmed undercover. And what I found was a profound amount of anti-Semitism. Not just anti-Israel, anti-Semitism, culminating with a singer. The main entertainment for this conference was a singer, a Palestinian singer, got up there and started yelling, "I'm anti-Semitic, be anti-Semitic with me," and the crowd is going wild. "You're not being anti-Semitic enough," he says. Their crowd, a standing ovation for this guy. So I released this video, and it kind of blows up. It's covered by the New York Times and the Washington Post, and the Department of Education watched the video, saw that I said that they spent $250,000 funding this conference, and they said, whoa. They began an investigation, which ended up showing that they are funding anti-Israel, anti-Semitic behavior on our campuses. And the president said, this is crazy. He signed an executive order just a couple of days ago saying no more. So I couldn't be prouder, guys.
Seriously, huge congratulations. And Ami, of course, the only place on Australian television where your brilliant documentary there was, of course, here on Outsiders, and you showed us that last year or earlier this year. I'll also say, Ami, that on that score, Outsiders was responsible in its own way for getting our Australian government to withdraw $10 million of funding, thanks to the work of David Adler and Pauline Hanson and others. So you can make a difference, is my point here, Ami. You make a huge difference. You get out there, you film the anti-Semitism, you're brave enough to go out there, be heckled, be turned away, all these sorts of things, but it's only through shining a light on the horror of this stuff that you get it changed, and you've had the law changed in America. James?
Yeah, so tell us about the practical effects of this this executive order, and what is that going to mean on college campuses, and what is the controversy around Jewishness and nationalism that I've heard some of the people talking about trying to criticize this executive order recently?
Yeah, I'll take the second one first. So there has been a lot of pushback from people talking about this kind of, it's kind of getting in the weeds a little bit, and they're kind of bringing that out because they want to push back on the president, to be frank. It's not a real thing about them being concerned about Jews and the way they're looked at. It's really about they want to push back on the president when he did something so wonderful. This idea of Jewish nationalism is just the way Title VI, which is the mechanism that the president is using to help to defund universities who don't protect Jews and don't fight against anti-Semitism, is necessary to say that you are a nationality in order to be covered by Title VI. Now, people are pushing back and saying, well, but Jews aren't nationality. Well, listen, again, I don't want to get too much in the weeds about it, but the Jews have always been called the nation of Jews. And the truth is, there is some truth to that we are a nationality. Not necessarily that Jews are members of a Jewish state, i.e. Israel. They can still be a nationality and still be an American and part of the United States. So that's kind of, again, why they were pushing back. The truth is, that wasn't the real reason why. They were pushing back because they didn't want to see the president succeed.
Rita.
In terms of the practical effects this thing will have. Now, sorry.
I mean, I was going to ask you about, there was a very disturbing attack in New Jersey just in the last few days on a kosher supermarket. and 3 people died. A policeman died earlier, and yet this hate crime hasn't got the sort of coverage you would expect in the US or elsewhere in the world. Can you tell us a little bit about that and about the rise of this sort of violence in places like New York and New Jersey?
Yeah, there was a horrific attack in New Jersey where several people got in a shootout with the police. They then drove to a kosher deli, stood in front of the deli, making sure, I mean, that we know now that it wasn't a random attack, that they actually targeted this deli because it was a kosher deli, and therefore there are going to be Jews inside. It was owned and run by Jews. And they shot up this deli. I believe there were several hundred casings they found, killing, tragically, 3 people. And you know, it really is an insight, I think a dark insight into our media, into how it was covered, how differently it was covered when there were other attacks, anti-Semitic attacks, when they were done by white nationalists. They love to jump on the train and saying, look at that white nationalist, the rise of white nationalism, because Trump is aiding and abetting nationalism. That's kind of their, you know, kind of the narrative they've been pushing since his election. And when they found out that this wasn't, in fact, a white nationalist attack, this was an attack by several black people who were part of the Black Israelite group, which is this kind of new neo-hatred of Jews, saying that the black people are the real Jews, not the other Jews. All of a sudden, they changed their tenor and kind of downplayed it and downplayed the attack. It's really despicable in how a lot of people in the media have handled this thing. But that just kind of gives you a sense of the double standard that exists and continues to exist in our country's media. It was really, now, the attack was despicable, and so was the coverage, frankly.
Ami, I just want to quickly play you this grab of Donald Trump calling for Americans to love Israel. Have a listen.
We have to get the people of our country, of this country, to love Israel more. I have to tell you that. We have to do it. We have to get them to love Israel more, because you have people that are Jewish people, that are great people. They don't love Israel enough. You know that. You know that.
Ami, has an American president ever spoken in that extraordinary way?
No, and the irony of that statement, which is such a true statement, by the way. There's no question that he's right on this. But this was used by many people to try to literally turn what he said on its head. The perversity of their argument to say that that was an anti-Semitic statement. I mean, that is one of the most philo-Jewish statements one can make, okay? I mean, you're laughing, but it's true. It's ridiculous. And that's kind of what this president has been facing in this country, and it's unfortunate and it's terrible, and it won't stop. It's not going to stop until he's gone. You know, which is why they're on these fishing expeditions to find something that he might have done to get him out of office.
Now, very briefly, just in 20 seconds, Ami, the practical measures. I cut you off before. What will be the practical results of the bill that's been introduced?
Yeah, I've got a daughter who's going to college next year, and let me tell you, it is a hostile environment for people who are pro-Israel and who are Jewish. And the president finally said if there are incidents of anti-Semitism which aren't fought back against, or in the curriculum which are anti-Israel, they can and will withhold funding from those universities and hold their feet to the fire to make sure that does not happen. And I believe that it will change fundamentally what it's like for a Jewish person to go to university in the United States.
Ami Horowitz, so great to have you on Outsiders. And just a little tip, I heard you might be spotted down at Bondi Beach again in the next few weeks. So if any of your fans see you...
now all my Australian fans are going to flock
You'll be mobbed. You'll be mobbed. Ami Horowitz, you've been a great part of the show all year, and terrific work. Thank you so much. Happy Hanukkah.